But the other issue, too, which is going to be interesting, is how things change, and this is sort of the segue to the foreign policy.
Well, I was going to say, how does this affect sort of the foreign policy?
John McCain is now going to probably be the ranking member of the Foreign Relations Committee, which is a little bit scary, although he's certainly not the worst out there.
Yeah, but I feel like he's getting so old that he's just getting really senile about everything.
No, he just has a very muscular approach to American foreign policy when America, still very much Cold War mentality when we had the budgets and we had the standing in the world to pursue that strategy. But that strategy has failed, and we don't have the budget to support it, and we don't have the will to support it, and the American people don't want it.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing is going to be, well, how much do they put pressure to do more fighting ISIS in Iraq and Syria? How much do they put pressure to take a harder line against the Ukraine? And actually, the most pressing problem, which actually is coming up at the end of November, is the Iranian nuclear negotiations are going on right now. It's at the end of November. And basically, no one's talking about extending the deadline. And quite frankly, there's a certain point where you have to decide if extending the deadline is really going to do anything other than extend the deadline. And
just kind of an appeasement
and I don't
model.
I don't think there's going to be a lot of support for that. But the issue is, and that's why it needs to get done too, because if it gets done, we'll be able to say it's done, whatever. But if the new Congress comes in and a deal isn't done, then look for more sanctions, or more sanctions are going to be applied. More bellicose rhetoric is going to apply. There's people are going to support a hard line against Iran, and even if we do get a deal, the Republicans might take a harder line, try to circumvent it in Congress anyway, knowing that if they just stall it or add onerous conditions to it, that the deal blows up in Obama's face. He takes a foreign policy defeat, and we don't solve the situation with Iran. Although the countervailing pressure is it's in their interest to get a deal. Everyone's interest. We need victory. The Iranians need the sanctions relief, and also the oil prices are dropping now.
Which is great. I just got a new car, and it just coincidentally happens.
It's fairly well, it's not coincidental at all. It's the Americans working with the Saudis, where we're producing more, we're more efficient in our vehicles and our manufacturing. We're using less oil, and the Saudis are wanting to keep their market share, and also push pressures on the Iranians and the Russians. So if oil stays stays low and it goes even lower, which some are projecting it'll do so, sort of a double-edged sword for the Iranians. On the one hand, they want sanctions relief to sell more of their oil. But if they do sell more of their oil and their props drops even further, it really hurts their economy. The Russian economy is in a tailspin right now. They're living off their reserves. And
does that have anything to do with the Ukraine takeover?
Well, their sanctions are hurting them too with the Ukraine. So it is all related. But that's why they're taking a harder line, because they think if they can keep the pressure up, they can weather the sanctions. But it's also masking the fact that the ruble is down 40%, and it's continuing to drop.
40%.
Yeah, it's done. They lost, I think, $130 billion of capital left the country.
Wow.
Their oil price, they're going to go in the red, and also, their takeover of the Crimea hasn't worked out for them, and it's costing money to fight the war. The proxy war in the Ukraine, even though Ukraine is basically crippled, so we can't do a whole lot about it, but. Everyone's sort of isolated Russia, and the Russians are going to the Chinese and they're making cutting deals with them, but this is for stuff that's not going to be realized for several years, and ultimately China's getting the better end of the deal. So the long-term strategy is in an ironic quest to be a greater power, Putin actually makes Russia a much weaker power.
Wow.
So that's what happens there. But again, Republicans taking control, do we take a much harder line against Russia than we have been, and that's certainly impossible.
Right, or what the Republicans have been talking about all this time is just lip service, and when they get into real power, will they actually do anything?
Yeah. Well,
it's just all rhetoric.
A lot of it is, and it's just going to be interesting that it's just we've gotten to a point in our history where literally opposing a president on every possible policy, whether
is more important than actually having a policy for themselves.
And more important than governing it. That makes no sense to me. I don't understand it.
It's really appalling, especially if you are a Republican out there, because I like to decline to the state as far as registering. I think we talked about it. I vote mainly Democratic, but I believe in some Republican things. And if you're a true Republican, I mean,
old school. I have a friend who's an old line, what I would call an Eisenhower Republican, old line.
Oh, that's
true,
even older
true
than
fiscal
Reagan,
conservative.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Reagan
was sort of new school, but
he was new school.
But it was W.
He was sort
Bush
of a
that really
hybrid.
took it to the new level. Yeah.
And I told him, I said, how can you have a party? I mean, this is not a government that is losing fiscal responsibility. They want to invade our personal lives in our bedroom and legislate personal morality. That's not a true conservative way to stay government.
True conservative is like hands out of the bed.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm like, at a certain point, you just got to say you're libertarian and live with it.
Yeah.
And get out of it. I mean, ideally,
look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm a libertarian.
You can do it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's good, and that'll be the interesting. See how far Rand Paul goes in 2016, because potentially he sort of aligns with a lot of that, and there's going to be a real fight for, does that capture the Republican Party, or do they go with somebody? Do they still try to push Jeb on us, or do they go with Huckabee, or I think probably some either Walker or Kasich from the Midwest,
because it's definitely going to be Hillary on the Democratic
side. Unfortunately, yes. I mean, yes and no. I mean, I think
is there anyone else stronger? I mean,
no. They're that's the thing. The bench is light.
Corey's not ready yet.
Corey's not ready. Elizabeth Warren shouldn't run. She's better in the Senate. Despite what a lot of progressives, I think she's doing great work there. She needs to stay there and get her chops. And I think Hillary is it. But Hillary can pick a younger vice president, so we have some potential continuity. And that was always I always thought
Warren might make a good Veep.
It's too soon. You really, you really need someone else. What I would have loved, and this is one thing I still
do think Obama was too soon. I know it's too late,
he was a little too soon.
But it was a perfect opportunity for him to do it.
This was the time, and unfortunately he didn't have enough experience, and he did the healthcare, but he should have done a jobs bill first. So hindsight's 2020, but I don't even know if it would have mattered. I think the Republicans were hell bent on destroying his presidency no matter what.
Crazy, and there's a lot of racial undertones. I don't want to get all into it.
I would think any Democrat, that was certainly some of them. I believe that was there, but I do believe the majority was about just doing the same thing they did to Clinton, except being they were more effective about
or
it.
The way the liberals did with George W.
It was sort of
sort of a backlash to that.
Exactly. That was they sort of thought that that it was their turn, and to get back at us for the same sniping. And it's just people have to realize the two-party system, the function of government is the problem, and
or maybe at least the electoral.
There needs to be a four parties, so you can have radical right and radical left can be as pure and crazy as they want to be.
Yeah.
And then you have the two guys in the center,
two
old farts over a cigar and some bourbon, cut the deals.
Greasing the wheels, baby.
A little bit, it's how it was done. It's not pretty, but
just
it gets
ask John Daly about that one.
Yeah,
Chicago style.
Yeah, sometimes you got to do it, and you also get an incremental approach, and changes can be made, and it turns out to be
baby steps.
Baby steps. America's not a revolutionary country in that sense. We do want incremental change, and that's the irony of it. Is for all the talk of socialism and Obamacare was a heritage plan. It's a very very conservative approach to healthcare reform, and yet it's been demonized, and for no reason.
And it got reformed a lot.
And it's not like the insurance companies didn't make a ton of money out of it. It's not like
they're still involved. Yeah,
everybody's still involved. Nobody lost.
Because the original healthcare bill was to cut out the insurance, make it more single payer.
Right, exactly. The public option, which would ultimately will probably end up there. But even if we don't, it doesn't matter. We can deal. We can have health insurance companies, and these people
it's still being tweaked,
money, and they're still being tweaked. Change is going to happen. They should have worked with that on things they don't like, but instead they're going to play small ball, and it's just going to be interesting to see.
Yeah. Well, I think on that note, that's a good way to wrap it up. Unless there's anything.
We'll do a more thorough analysis. So I guess. Probably, I don't know when the next
December 1st is when we're going to shoot for the December podcast.
Okay.
But I did want you, before we go, it's the month of Thanksgiving. We want to be thankful. So why don't you mention, you can either put a historical world news spin on it, or you can just say in a personal life, what are you thankful for in this time of Thanksgiving?
This is such the wrong time to ask me that. No, whatever. I'm, thankful to be doing new things, hopefully. Doing new stuff in the new year, family's always good. I don't know.
Health? Are you thankful for your health?
So far, we'll see.
Are you thankful for expressing your opinions on the show?
Yeah, I'm thankful
for having an outlet.
Yes, I am thankful for that. So thank you for that.
I'm thankful for you coming on here, because I think not only do you know the current events, but you really put a unique spin on it with the historical reference and talking about not just in the because I think it's too easy to look at it under a microscope of what's happening right now, but you really take it back into the
I try. You know, if that expensive education did one thing for me, it did that. So we'll leave it there. Didn't do anything else for me, by the way, but it did make me more fun at cocktail parties.
All right. Well, thanks again for watching. We'll be right back. You're watching I'm Not a Professional, but wait, I am. Check us out, soundcloud.com/SamJackPodcast, youtube.com/Viral Media Network 415. Look for the playlist, Sam Jack Podcast. Thanks for watching. We'll be right back.